Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is a coaching call with Kate. Kate is the mom of James, who's 11, and she reached out wanting some coaching around the fact that James is a little bit socially anxious. He was hesitant to talk to people in new situations and hesitant to speak out in class. I coached Kate on some strategies that she could use to help James, because this is the thing, when we have kids who are a little bit anxious, or anxious at all, I guess, we are the ones who are best situated to help them. Lynn Lyons, who you've heard on the podcast many times, who I love, says if she had a choice between working with kids, and she considers that anyone who's not old enough to drive themselves to her office, if she had a choice with working only with the kids or only with the parents, she would always choose working with the parents, because you're the one that's with your child when they are feeling anxious and when things come up, and you're the one who they love and trust. So that's the great thing about anxiety, is that you as a parent can really help your child with their anxiety. And that's what I did with Kate. We helped her with some strategies, and be sure to stick around to the end and see how things went with James. I also want to invite you to support the show. It takes a lot of time and energy and money and effort and, a whole team of people to put this podcast together. And we would love for you to support the show. You can go to patreon.com/peacefulparenting. And there are a couple different levels that you can choose from. One of the levels, it will give you access to weekly Q&As with me and my coaches. So you can support the show by going to patreon.com/peacefulparenting. And I can support you if you are struggling at all with staying calm when things are hard with your kid. You can go to sararosensweet.com/yelling and sign up for my free course, How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids. Again, I want to support you. And whenever things are tough, we always start with self-regulation. That is our first big idea of peaceful parenting. And self-regulation doesn't mean that you never get upset. I want to make that clear. It does not mean you never get upset, annoyed, frustrated, angry with your kids. Of course you will, because you're human. But it does mean that you try to calm yourself so that you can respond when things are hard rather than reacting out of anger. It's always the place to start if you're struggling to work on that self-regulation. And you know what? You're not going to be perfect. None of us are. And if we mess up, if we fall down, we give ourselves lots of compassion, we forgive ourselves, and we do a repair with our child. So again, if you would like some support around that, you can check out the free course, How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, at sararosensweet.com/yelling. Okay, let's meet Kate. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So how can I support you today?
So my son James is 11 years old, and he's a really quiet kid. He's certainly an introvert, which is, of course, great. But I think what I'm worried about is he is increasingly sort of having trouble interacting with people he doesn't know. For example, he was on a new soccer team this year, and he really didn't talk to any of the kids for the entire 10-month season. Same thing with adults. And so this is his last year in elementary school. So I'm kind of feeling just worried about him as he goes to middle school, and just how do I encourage him to put himself out there a little bit more?
So has he always been a more, I actually don't like the word shy, so I'm going to try and think of another word for it. Has he always been a more sort of quiet, introverted, cautious kid ever since he was little?
Yes, definitely. I also don't like the word shy, and I agree with you. I think he's definitely quiet, and that's just who he is. So I'm okay with that. It's just I don't want him to become sort of withdrawn. And I think with the pandemic and with getting ready for middle school, it's been a hard few years.
Yeah. Is there anyone that outside of your family that he feels comfortable and chatty with?
He has a nice group of friends at elementary school. He's known them all since SK. And so I think he is somewhat chatty with them, like still on the quieter side, but he does have friends. He does seem to talk to them. So I'd say that's who he's comfortable with, and then family.
Okay, good. So it's not that he doesn't have anyone that he talks to and he's just like by himself, not talking to anyone all the time. Okay, good. So it's specifically new people. So do you think this causes him distress?
It's a good question. I think it makes him sort of unhappy in activities. So, for example, the soccer again, this we're playing soccer 4 to 5 times a week, and then not really connecting with anyone sort of made it not very fun. And the same thing about summer camp. He went to sleepaway summer camp for the first time, and it was really hard. And so, I do think it bugs him a bit, and I think it makes him like less happy to do things, new things.
Does he talk to you about it?
Not really. He doesn't really talk about it being something that bugs him, but so no.
Has it ever come to the surface that you noticed that he didn't talk to anyone for the whole soccer season?
Yeah, like I'll say that to him and he'll be like, well, there's just, I don't know. I don't know what to say, right? Like he'll sort of say that. So he notices that he doesn't talk to
Okay,
people.
and you've talked about it with him?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And he says, I don't know what to say. Is there anything else that he says about why he doesn't
Well,
talk to anyone?
he'll say in the soccer example or the camp example, he'll say, well, they're all friends. They all know each other. I'm the only one who doesn't know people. And I mean, it's not true. Like other people don't know people as well. And, you're all doing soccer or you're all at camp or you're all at swimming lessons, whatever the activity is, it's not that he's the only new person. So that's kind of what he defaults to is just that, well, I'm the only one who doesn't know someone or I'm the only one who's new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is because there's some strategies that I can give you because it sounds like social anxiety, right? Like it sounds like he's got some anxiety that he doesn't, what if they don't like me or what if I say the wrong thing or, he just chooses not to talk because it feels like a risk, right? And his worry brain, like if you or anyone else has been listening to the podcast, I talk a lot about the worry brain, which is a concept from Lynn Lyons in the book Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. And it's that emergency part of your brain that's like the smoke alarm in your kitchen that lets you know if there's a fire. But the problem is that the smoke alarm can go off if the toast burns or if there's an actual fire, and the smoke alarm can't tell the difference between a real threat or a perceived threat. And so for James, there's this perceived threat that, it feels, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't feel real to him, but it's not actually a life or death threat, right? That what if somebody doesn't talk to me back or they don't like me or whatever. And so it's that worry brain that's saying, don't talk to anyone because it's too risky. And so the tools that we want to use are helping him recognize that that's what's happening and coaching him to be able to talk back to that worry part or worry brain. However, we need a way in, right? Like, because you can't just like all of a sudden be like, okay, son, here's what we're doing. He needs to have some buy-in and he needs to understand how this is making his life harder or maybe not harder, but not as much fun as it could be, right? To like meet new people and make new friends and feel more comfortable. So I just went on for a long time, but like, what do you think about that? Like, can you think of anything that you could talk to him about as sort of that way in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I like how you put that. I mean, I guess again, I get like not to keep coming back to it, but I guess he'll be at summer camp for a month this time, and then middle school after that. So I guess I feel like that is kind of the end. Is just like as you're starting these new things, it would be good to have some ideas about how to connect with new people. Like I think that would sort of be it. Again, not like a very sort of non-threatening like you're nothing wrong with you, but just like how do we find some strategies? I guess that would be my end, I think.
So I've noticed, I wonder, might be some like good ways to start the conversation. So you might say, I noticed, and you and I have talked about it, you can say to him that when you were at soccer and summer camp this past year, you didn't talk to any of the new people. And I wonder if maybe going forward, you might like to have some strategies so we can, help you understand what's going on in your brain and maybe where that is coming from. Do you think he'd be open to that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would work. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can just say like, kiddo, I don't want you to feel like you can't meet new people or make new friends. And like your life will be a lot smaller if you don't open yourself up to the possibility of new people. Okay. So that's how you can start to talk to him about it. And so like, does he have any other anxiety? Like, is there any other place where anxiety or worry shows up? Because usually there's more
More
than one
places.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say school has a big place of anxiety for him. I don't think so. Like, I mean, maybe, he fights with his sisters a bit, so I don't know if that would be a place where anxiety can come
So
out
it's
or maybe
purely just the
yeah.
social
It's the
anxiety.
social
Yeah,
anxiety. It's
yeah.
definitely the
Because I was
social.
gonna say, if there's anyone listening, or for you or anyone else in your family, this strategy that we're talking about is for more than just social anxiety. It's for separation anxiety, or, fear of dogs, or whatever. It's a tool that we can use in all sorts of different areas of anxiety, but we're specifically talking about social anxiety. And also, I want to say that for any parents who are listening who have smaller children who are more cautious or slow to warm, as we might say, that's a biological protection mechanism, right? Because kids are like, it's actually safer for them when they're little, that they're not just like running away from us in the grocery store or whatever, that they kind of want to stay close and stay with who they're comfortable with. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with anyone. And I know you know this, but I'm just saying it for anyone else who's listening, that there's nothing wrong with that instinct. And I think we just want to recognize that we can allow that, and we can encourage exploration, we can encourage the more boldness, at the same time as we just recognize that it's okay to be a little bit more quiet or cautious. Yeah. So I always like to think of the example of, if somebody's afraid of the water, you're not going to go and throw them in the deep end, but you're also not going to let them never go to the water. So you want to find that balance between a little bit of a challenge and also not avoiding the things that make them anxious. So just, you can keep that in mind as you're working with James too, in terms of like the challenge, but also, giving him the tools so that he feels more comfortable. Okay, so in terms of the tools, the first thing you want to think about is explaining to him how his brain works. And the smoke alarm example that I gave you is a really, I think, a useful one for kids. Like, you've got this part of your brain called the amygdala. It's a part of your brain that keeps you safe. It's like the security system in your brain that is always on the look for danger, right? Like, if a tiger jumped out at you out in the wild, your brain activity would shift from your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part that's in the front of your brain. That's where we have like logic, thought, planning, all that executive function, which is usually the part of our brain that we're using. But if the amygdala detects a threat, that part of your brain takes over, and it's unconscious and automatic, right? And that's where when we're feeling anxiety or a little bit of panic, that's because the amygdala has given our brain and body the sign to mobilize. Like, it starts to make the chemicals for like adrenaline and cortisol, so you can like run away from that tiger, right? So what happens is, so you can explain to him about the amygdala, and you can say, your amygdala thinks that talking to new people is an emergency. And so what you need to do is talk back to your amygdala, or your worry brain, or your worry part. You can, he's 11, so you can call it as amygdala if you want. For littler kids, sometimes you can call it the worry brain, but even some little kids love that big scientific word, right? So you can just say, when you're in a new situation, you can coach yourself, hey amygdala, I can do this. I can handle this. Like, that's the anti-anxiety phrase, is I can handle this, right? So you can tell him that he can coach himself, and you can practice together. Maybe you can do some role play, pretend that you're somebody new on his soccer team or whatever, and do some role play, and help him to recognize what's going on inside his brain and his body when he's starting to feel a little bit anxious. Recognize those signs. Ask him, how does your tummy feel? Does your heart beat fast? Does it feel like your hands are cold? Like, those are all things that happen when the body and brain have mobilized for the fight or flight. And so helping him to recognize that, and why it's happening, what it feels like, and then have some things that he can say to himself when it is happening. Like, I can handle talking to this new person. And you don't want to say, like, what's the worst that can happen? Because that's what anxious brains do, right? Is they picture the worst case scenario.
I probably
So
asked that before. Yeah.
yeah, so the worst that can happen is that everybody laughs at me and points at me, and I'm like the laughing stock, and yeah, that's the worst. So you don't want to go to what's the worst can happen. You want to say, well, yeah, I mean, what could happen? Maybe they wouldn't talk to you. And then, could you handle that? Sure. Yeah. You don't want to put ideas in his head necessarily, but maybe you could ask him, if some of these things happened, what could you do, or what would it feel like? And do you think you could handle that?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Could you handle it? And I think he could say yes, he could.
And you could talk to him about, the scales of risk, right? Like, it is risky to talk to new people. It's not easy to talk to new people. And I think you want to pull out at this moment that, of course, it feels scary to talk to new people. And everybody feels that way. Because I think maybe he doesn't realize that everybody feels that way, that everybody feels like it's a little bit. And you said he has outgoing younger sisters. So maybe not everybody. 90% of people, 90% of people feel a little bit nervous when they're going someplace and they don't know anybody, because sometimes we get anxious about feeling anxious. So, if you can just say, like, it's normal to feel that way. Everybody feels that way sometimes. And we can talk back to that part of you that feels that way, and reassure that part of you, we can handle this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. And the same would, I guess, would be the same scenario, for example, teachers. So he finds it hard when there's a new teacher that he doesn't know and he just doesn't talk, right? And then it seems like, but I don't think it's like nervousness about the academic part of school. It's, again, the social part of talking to a teacher.
Yeah, it's risky. It feels risky to, say what you think out loud to a new person who doesn't know you. And of course, so you want to bring out, that's the Lynn Lyon says she can't do her practice without, of course, those two words. Like, of course, it feels a little bit scary to talk to somebody that you've never met before or somebody new. And you can do it, right? So we don't want to say but, because but erases everything you've just said. So of course, it feels a little bit scary to do this. And you can handle it. And you can do it. And you can tell that part of your brain that's telling you that it's an emergency, that you can handle it. You want to help him come up with some sort of stock phrase that's meaningful to him. You can ask him, what do you think you can say back to your amygdala?
Yeah, I mean, I can handle this. I mean, that's very concrete, I think, for kids. But yeah, or I could do this. Yeah.
Another thing that I think might be helpful is if you can think of times together when he has talked to new people or he has done it. Like, I mean, even going back to SK, you said he had a group of friends from SK that he met. He didn't know them before he started SK, right? It was a long time ago, but he did have to talk to new people at one point, and he has done this before, even if he forgot about it. And, the thing about anxiety is it often gives you a little bit of amnesia, that you forget that you have done things before.
Right. No, it makes sense. And also I was thinking about that with summer camp. He did sort of meet someone he chatted with during the
Great.
week. Eventually one kid.
Yeah.
I don't know how close they were, but like in some ways, like that's a good example, is that you did do it. You did talk to one person.
Yeah. Perfect. That's great.
Okay. Okay. This is good. I think thinking through the buy-in piece a little bit more too, just because, yeah, like how do yeah, I like what you said about your world will be small if you can't sort of put yourself out there a bit.
Yeah. And he will miss out maybe on some opportunities of a future best friend, or, being able to have the teachers know all of the amazing things that are going on in his brain if he never tells anyone about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. The school piece too, because yeah, exactly. You have to put yourself out there in school a bit.
Yeah. So just to review the steps, you want to think of how you can get the buy-in from him that this is important to work on. You want to explain to him how his brain works, and the worry part, or the amygdala, that's setting off the false alarms that it's actually dangerous to talk to new people. And then you want to coach him on actually back up a little bit. You want to help him recognize the signs that that's happening. Like, what does it feel like in your body? What are you thinking? And then when you recognize that your amygdala has gotten activated, what can you do from your prefrontal cortex to talk back to that amygdala? And maybe he even writes something down on a card that he has in his pocket. I can handle this. Or, hey, amygdala, this is not an emergency. I can handle this.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe adding in that this is not an emergency part would be helpful.
Right. This is not an emergency. I like that too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. This is really helpful.
You're welcome. Good. We'll catch up again and see how things went.
Okay. Wonderful. I'll look forward to it.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. Hi, Kate. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm glad to be here.
So how has it been? I think it's been about 2 months since we talked.
Yeah, it's been going well. I've been trying the strategies. I've sort of focused on that question that we talked about, the one that said not what's the worst that can happen, but what could happen if you approach a group and you don't if you approach a group and you say hi. And he said, when I asked him that, he said, well, the worst that could happen is they won't talk to me. Or one thing that could happen is they won't talk to me. And I said, so we kind of talked that through, and I said, well, if that happens, that's okay. You walk away and you do your own thing. And also it's unlikely that no one's going to say hi or no one's going to talk to you. So that was kind of the first sort of thing I did. And then I've had two examples sort of since that I've tried to sort of reinforce this with. So the first was when he started a new skiing program, and he didn't really know anyone in the class. So I tried to sort of like build him up the day before and like, can you say hi to people? Can you try to talk to people in the group? And the first day it was hard. He said he just like sort of felt uncomfortable and didn't know what to say, and just it's easier to just not say anything. But then the next week he said he did try to talk to someone. So I don't know if that was sort of my conversations with him, but that was sort of a good sign. I think maybe still some work to do there.
Did you talk to him about the worry brain, and did he seem to understand why it happened to him? Like why it sort of felt like an emergency and safer to not talk to new people?
Yeah, he did. We talked about the worry brain quite a bit, and he was sort of he didn't completely buy into it, if you know what I mean. He's like, well, outwardly doesn't feel worried, maybe. Like, so it was sort of a bit tricky to talk about how, but your brain is worrying. And so it was a little tough, but I think it's something I could go back to a bit more. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
In office hours in my membership yesterday, there was a mom who has an 11-year-old, say James is 11, right? She said it took them a year of talking about the worry brain until he finally acknowledged that he does indeed have a worry brain and was willing to use the strategy. And so I said, to her, I was like, good on you for not giving up. And a year is definitely longer than I've seen it take in the past. But I'm just saying, don't give up and like keep talking about it and have it be part of your family vocabulary. And I think I said this to you before, but like you can use it too. Like, when you are feeling anxious about something, presentation at work or something like that, you can say, oh, I can feel my worry brain acting up right now. And I needed to calm it by reminding my worry brain that I can handle this work presentation and it's normal to be a little bit nervous. So, anytime you can kind of normalize it and talk about it in the family, that's really helpful.
Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, I can see that being helpful with my other kids too. It sounds like a good way to sort of frame question like anxiety.
It's such a great tool. Like my daughter had her friend sleep over the other night, and she said that they were really nervous about the first day of the semester of new classes. And I said, did you tell them about the worry brain? And she said, yes, I did.
Great. That's cute.
And it's just once you have that tool in your family toolbox, it's so helpful, and you can bring it out for lots of different situations.
Okay, that's really helpful. That's great. My other example was that he went to a new like after school math program, and there was a kid he knew, but he was too nervous to say hi. And so we talked about it afterwards the first week. And then the second week, he said he was less worried because again, it was like, well, what's going to happen if he doesn't say hi? So
Yeah.
I think I can see a little bit of progress, but yeah, I like what you're saying about maybe keeping it part of our family toolbox and really reinforcing it and keeping chatting about it as he
And
gets
also as he has more successes. So you said the second week he did talk to the other
yeah,
kid? Yeah. And so you can really like build on that and say like, hey, you were nervous about it. Your worry brain was telling you it's better not to say anything in case he doesn't remember you or in case he doesn't say anything back. And you did it anyways. And he talked to you. So, that's the thing about anxiety can give us a little bit of amnesia. And we forget that, we've been in these situations before and we've been successful before because it just feels so paralyzing and catastrophic when we are feeling anxious. So if you can just, when he does have successes, if you can reinforce those by saying like, hey, you were nervous about this and you did it. And if worry doesn't resonate with him, you can call it his nervous brain, like, or his, we both hate, I know we both don't like the word shy, but you can think of something else that resonates with him more because it's the same thing. It's just a slightly different emotion.
okay. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
And I like how you've framed things for him in terms of, what are you going to miss out on if you don't take the chance, right? It's not what's the worst thing that can happen because that's a hard thing to say to an anxious person because they can come up with a lot of worst case scenarios. But if you say like, what are you going to miss out on if you don't take this chance? That's pretty powerful.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I like that. That resonated with me after we talked about that. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. What are you going to miss out on? And the world is small if you don't put yourself out there.
Totally. And how has he gone to more than 2 ski?
Yeah, yeah, we're halfway through the term. So yeah, I think it's going okay. I think it's still, it's still hard for him, but I think there's like a little bit of, progress and talking to people and sort of realizing you just sort of have to put yourself out there.
Good. And the school thing you said that had gotten better just because of time. Is he talking in school as far as you know?
Yeah, as far as I know, I think the school thing is getting better. I got a chance to go in the classroom too and sort of watch, and yeah, I think it's going a bit better at school too. So
Good.
yeah.
Well, I mean, keep this stuff in your back pocket for the beginning of next year when he has a new teacher. And good luck, and, keep us posted.
I will. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thanks for all your time and help.
You are so welcome. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.